out of the humbleness in the first instance, I don't know actually how I would address thee, but I would say that out of the depth of my heart, I really and strongly believe in Christianity, and it's my lifestyle, and it's fruitful day to day in my life. And I actually got 3 questions which I would like really to ask. And the first one is actually related to this pamphlet that I actually saw. In the first instance, it is talking of the promised Messiah has come. And then it uses the quote that it says that in the year 1891, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, he announced that God had appointed him the Messiah mentioned in the prophecy of the Bible and the Holy Quran. Where my question will be, if he was appointed to be the Messiah, are we talking of the same Messiah whom came to die for the world? Are we talking of a Messiah who came with the quote that he is using there from under the object of his coming? The Lord of heaven and earth has sent me to bring the world back to God. And if he had come, the world is already back to God. And if he haven't yet come, and he's still to come, we're still waiting for him. And we as great believers in Jesus Christ's coming, we believe strongly that still he is to come, because the world is not yet back. And Jesus was to come and judge the world, rather than actually bringing the world back to God. We're supposed to be already at God. How is your viewpoint on that first question?
Thank you very much. But first of all, let me split the question into so many questions as actually it is. It is not a single question. It is a single question only apparently, but it has its own components which have to be dealt with separately as independent questions. The most important of all these should be the expectation of the re-advent of Jesus Christ himself. Now this question would further lead to an investigation as to whether Jesus Christ was a literal Son of Man, or was he a prophet of God with a special office added to the prophethood, which was Messiahhood. And what was his role which he was to perform according to those prophecies which he had come to fulfill. And what did he mean when he said that he would come again? All these are questions which have to be answered independently. Before I begin to answer the last part of your question, as to whether Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian was right in his claim that he represented Jesus Christ, peace be upon him. Now, if you want a short answer to the last part, it's so easy. What he said, nobody can disagree with. That Messiah's ultimate purpose is to bring man back to God. In his terminology, you may refer to him as God the Father, but the same person. To bring the human beings back to God was the reason why Jesus came, was the ultimate purpose of his advent. Now the second part of the question should also be answered in relation to this understanding of Jesus. Was it a different purpose in the beginning, in the first advent, for which he came, from the purpose which he will perform or fulfill during his second advent? If it was the same purpose, then where has you found it fulfilled in the first advent? If he has failed in the first advent, which was the prime advent, if he failed to bring man to God, as you expect prophets of Allah to bring man to God, then what is the use of his second coming? I don't see any reason why this second repetition of the same experiment could result in better fruits. Now, I know you're a Christian, and knowing your background, I'm trying to make you understand these basic factors, which are constituents of your question. I believe here you must first of all rectify your concept of spiritual changes in the world. Jesus Christ, when he came, we believe he was successful. We believe that he did not fail in his mission of bringing man to God. But the mission of all prophets of God, all those who are dear to God, is never fulfilled in numbers. It is fulfilled in quality. So it is a qualitative analysis you have to make, not a quantitative analysis. How many apostles did he leave intact behind? Out of the 12 known, one renegated and cursed him, and the other also showed the signs of weakness. So would you measure his success by the 10 apostles he left behind? Most certainly not. He brought about fundamental changes in the thinking of the society. He rejected an attitude of formality and brought home the reality to man that it is the essence which is important. It is the spirit of turning to God, which is always aimed at by all religions. When the religions move away from this spirit and overemphasize the form, then they deteriorate and they cannot perform any purpose. This was the message of Jesus Christ delivered, and apparently, though rejected, it succeeded. It began to bring about changes in a society which was hostile. But ultimately, it is the power of ideas which is all important, which does succeed in the end. So what happened after the 300 years of Christianity, as it entered the 4th century? What do you see as the great revolution of success of Christianity? It didn't happen overnight. It was the same Jesus who was working in their minds, whose ideas were powerful, whose ideas had to emerge victorious, which continuously brought about the changes in the thinking of the people, and those changes in the thinking ultimately defeated coercion against Christianity. And suddenly, to a wayward eye, to a worldly observation, it suddenly appeared as a bombshell. There is no such thing as a bombshell in religious revolutions. They are brought about by the powerful ideas. So I believe Jesus was successful in his first advent. But if you want to judge by numbers, then he miserably failed. What would he do during his second advent? I believe if it is a true Jesus, that is his representation, then again he would succeed with the help of powerful ideas. Truth which must ultimately conquer the entire opposition of falsehood. And as such, Ahmadiyyat can offer the proof of its constant, persistent success. Changes are brought about everywhere in the world through Ahmadiyyat, in the thinking of the people everywhere in the world. If you go to West Africa, to East Africa, where Ahmadi community is, with the grace of Allah, far more strongly entrenched, you will see the same Africans belonging to the same nations changing in their behavior, becoming more moral, becoming more truthful, becoming less interested in material pursuits than before. This is Christianity in action. So if you think that Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian claimed to bring about bring about a democratic revolution in the world, I believe you're wrong. If that is true, that is your expectation is true, then you are left with no option but to reject him, like the Jews did in the first instance. It is the expectation which has to be rectified. And from here I take you back to the first part of your questions. What was Jesus Christ? What was the expectation of the Jewish people of Jesus Christ? Not Jesus, but of Christ. Was it a spiritual expectation or a material expectation? The case of the Jews of that time period is very similar to the case of the Christians of today. They had misread the prophecies and taken them to have delivered a literal message of a Messiah with a crown over his head, a Messiah who would raise sword against the yoke of the Roman Empire and deliver the Jewish people from that yoke. That was their expectation based on the scriptural prophecies. That is why repeatedly they inquired from Jesus, don't you believe in the scriptures? Don't you believe in the prophecies? He said, yes, I do. But he interpreted them differently. And he interpreted them spiritually rather than taking them literally. Another example will illustrate the case in point further. It was said in the Old Testament that Christ would appear after Elijah had descended, not before. It was a very clear prophecy. Who was Elijah? Do you know that? Ever heard of him? Was he a known person living among them there or no? He belonged to history. He had appeared about 800 years before Jesus Christ. And it is reported that while he was traveling, sitting on his chariot, was taken lock, stock and barrel along with the chariot up into heaven. And there he disappeared, and his lone companion was there to wail and mourn his disappearance. And from then on, the biblical account develops into a prophecy that Elijah would return to the earth once again, sitting on the same fiery chariot. And as he descends, he'll begin to tell the world that the time of Jesus is near at hand. Open up the doors of your hearts and prepare yourself for accepting him. Now this is the literal prophecy. What was the fault of the Jews if they rejected Jesus Christ? Because this prophecy had not got filled as they found it written in the book. No Elijah appeared from the heaven, no chariot descended. Yet Jesus claimed to be that Messiah whom they were expecting. Again, this is a battle between the literal and the spiritual, the cryptic meaning or the formal meaning. And it was Jesus himself who had waged a war against form and repeatedly pointed that the truth lies in the spirit, not in form, not in the form. But look at the Christians, unfortunately, I pity them, who forgot the entire essence of Christianity and reverted back to form rather than emphasizing the spirit. If the Jews had understood that in the divine prophecies there is an underlying spirit of things which have to be understood, otherwise you will fail to understand the import and the reason for that prophecy. So that happened in case of Jesus Christ. The Jewish elders mocked at his followers and said, okay, if that is the Messiah, we'll believe him, but first produce Elijah. Where is he? Or don't you believe in scriptures? When the same attitude of the Jewish people was referred to Jesus Christ himself, his answer was, John the Baptist is the Elijah. Not in these words, but exactly in the same meaning. And there is no Christian scholar who can reject this. He indicated him without naming him, but everyone understood whom he meant. So indicating John the Baptist, he said, he is the Elijah who was expected to come from heaven before my advent. Believe it or not, it's up to you. And they did not. They turned back, mocking at him and scorning him for such spiritual interpretations of such words which is so obviously literal. So if Jesus was right then, that it is not a literal prophecy which is fulfilled, it is the essence and spirit of a divine prophecy which you must expect to be fulfilled, and you should recognize it. If Jesus was right, then Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian is right. Because it is the same debate all over again. Both Christians and the Muslims who do not agree with the Ahmadiyya community say, where is Jesus who was to descend from heaven? Who is he who is born out of a human mother? The same was the objection raised by the Jewish people of Jesus' time. Where is Elijah? Descended from heaven. What do you mean by referring to John the Baptist, who is born as a human mother, out of a human mother, to be Elijah? So understand the similarity, the most fundamental similarity between the two. If you answer one, you'll understand the problem of the other. If you answer the first problem correctly, to understand the second is no problem at all. But if you insist on formal, verbal, literal fulfillments of prophecies, then you can wait till eternity. None would ever come. Moreover, you should understand that the context in which Jesus was to appear has completely changed. The Messiah expected by the Jewish people is no longer valid for them. There is no Israel under the subjugation of a great Roman Empire. From whom will a Messiah deliver them, if ever he comes as expected by the Jewish people? The whole world situation has changed. Moreover, can you find any single incident in the entire religious history anywhere in the world where somebody who was claimed to have ascended to heaven actually descended bodily? And when you fail to find one single example, then you should realize that the same is the case of Jesus Christ. You see, it is not just Jesus who is claimed to have ascended to heaven. There are so many of them. Everywhere the religious history is full of such fiction or legends that and that ascended to heaven bodily. Okay, if all of you claim, we accept, okay, we accept for a while, for the sake of argument. But why didn't they ever return? None ever did. So how could you expect Jesus to return bodily? And then you have to understand the concept of bodily ascent. What was death? Why do you say Jesus died for your sake? If he had not separated from his body, he never died. If his soul separated from his body, and returned back to occupy the same physical being, then his death was only temporary, but human body was eternalized. Then there was no separation of human Jesus from that of godly, as Christians would have us believe. Then Jesus returned to exactly the same position as he occupied before the Trinity, before the crucifixion. So did that body ascend to heaven? And if it was a physical body, as you are still expecting it to be a physical body, where is the right hand of God where that body sat? Why didn't you, imagine what was happening, what happened? The body, if it is a physical body, even an astral body has limitations. It's confined to a geography, a physical or spiritual geography, which God does not have. So where is the right side of God in any celestial throne where Jesus could have sat there in that spiritual or whatever body you call it, and sat there and waited for his descent? Was it God who descended? Would be the question when he comes again according to your expectation. Was the celestial throne emptied of God? If not, then the difference between the two persons becomes permanent, for them never to be merged again into one. A God descends and a God remains in the heaven. The God who descends is a part and parcel of God and not the same Son who was crucified. Because with crucifixion, that chapter came to an end. So when you go on analyzing your own belief in the person of Jesus Christ and try to first of all define his person, then you will begin to understand what Christianity offers you. And then, only then will you begin to understand that you are living in dreams. No such Jesus would ever return to earth. Already it's too late. Already man is standing on the precipice of destruction. Things have happened which have destroyed the morality of man. How on earth could a phantom appearance of Jesus Christ suddenly change the entire morality of man? Why not in the first place? When he offered his blood for your sake, did he not bring about that spiritual revolution? Not in the world as a whole, among his own followers. So the answer to that lies in the fact that no such revolution is ever brought about by any divine messenger. The revolution is brought about only among those who submit themselves to the authority of their divine messengers. The rest simply do not mean. There may be billions against a few, but it is the quality that matters. Quantity just does not matter in the scheme of things. Why don't you understand that for the sake of evolutionary changes, for small advantageous factors, billions of forms of life were sacrificed for bringing the evolutionary journey a notch or a decimal notch up. The life which was left behind did not mean, although it was overwhelmingly larger, than a more qualified form of life in comparison to the previous one. This is the scheme of things, which happens everywhere, every day, in the entire world. When husband and wife meet, in their lifetime, billions upon billions of sperms come over, go waste. And for the possible conception of a single child, billions of possible candidates for life are destroyed and wasted. What is the result? Just a small advantage the one sperm has over the remaining of its fellow beings. That advantage wins, and less competitive, less qualified sperms are all wasted. So don't get yourself involved in numbers. The victory of numbers is meaningless unless it brings about quality. And as such we believe Hazrat Mirza Sahib to be a representation, a spiritual representation of Jesus Christ, not a bodily descent of Jesus Christ as you expect. Thank you.